At Sunday dinner, my sister called me a homewrecker while our mother calmly poured wine, as if betrayal belonged beside the roast. We were the Monroes, curated smiles, a perfect house, heirlooms gleaming for the camera. But the gold bracelet missing from its velvet box told another story, one of favoritism and quiet cruelty. Laughter circled the table, but I felt it tightening like a noose. Rumors now carried my name, sharpened to cut. And tonight, beneath chandeliers and family portraits, I promised myself one thing. I would stop being their scapegoat no matter what it cost. The candles flickered against the ceiling as the cameras rolled, capturing every polished smile and carefully curated gesture. My mother's 60th birthday was not just a family gathering, it was an event, a live stream staged to show the world that the Monroes had perfected the art of togetherness. The dining room was dressed in satin and gold, the chandelier refracted like broken stars, and the comments on the live feed scrolled faster than I could read. Words like family goals and so classy filled the screen, while the truth pulsed beneath the tablecloth like a hidden wire waiting to snap. I sat straight, shoulders stiff, telling myself to breathe. The gold birdcage on the mantel caught the light, empty as always, its hollowness taunting me. The family heirlooms gleamed in their usual spots, as if they were guardians of a legacy I could never fully claim. Then came the moment I had secretly anticipated, the gift exchange. My mother reached for the velvet box, the one every relative knew carried the Monroe emerald bracelet, passed down for generations. My stomach tightened. For months I'd been told, with half smiles and careful silences, that I was the responsible daughter, the steady hand. I thought perhaps, finally, recognition would land on me like a crown. She opened the box, the cameras zoomed in, and the bracelet shone like liquid green fire. But instead of placing it in my hands, my mother turned with a flourish and slipped it onto Skylar's wrist. "It has always belonged to her," she declared, her voice calm as if announcing the weather. Applause rose around the table, cousins and uncles clapping in rhythm with the online audience that erupted in hearts and emojis. Skylar lifted her arm to the lens, letting the jewels sparkle under the chandelier, while I sat frozen, the velvet box closing like a coffin on any illusion I still carried. I pressed my nails into my palm beneath the table, grounding myself in the pain. For a moment, I imagined standing, interrupting, demanding to know why. But the cameras panned across our faces, and I felt trapped in a script I hadn't agreed to. My smile cracked, but I forced it back into place, afraid the audience would notice the fracture. Skylar, radiant in her curated perfection, leaned toward me with the grin of someone who always won. "Don't look so serious, sis," she whispered, just loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You're our family's extra." She laughed, a sound rehearsed for entertainment, and tossed her hair like the star of her own reality show. The comments exploded. "She's savage." "That's so funny." "The sister looks salty." My chest burned as if I'd swallowed fire. I tried to respond, but my throat betrayed me. The room blurred at the edges, and yet the cameras were merciless, closing in. Skylar reached for another glass of champagne, her bracelets jingling like victory bells. My mother dabbed her lips with a napkin, pretending not to hear the cruelty, while my father stared at his plate as if cutting through meat required his full attention. "Don't take it so hard," my mother said finally, her tone more to the audience than to me. "Skylar is only joking." The words dripped with dismissal, gaslighting wrapped in silk. The implication was clear. I was overreacting, too sensitive, ungrateful for the family stage that made us enviable. I swallowed hard, keeping my expression neutral. Inside, however, something jagged shifted. It was not simply pain, though pain was there. Pulsing. It was recognition. I was being written out of the story in real time, and a million strangers were nodding along. Skylar raised her glass high. "To family," she toasted, her eyes gleaming as if she knew exactly what she had done. The cameras followed, capturing every angle, while I sat invisible, erased yet again. But this time, as the applause echoed and the comments streamed, I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Unstoppable. The lens turned unexpectedly, a rogue cameraman sweeping across the table at the exact moment a tear slipped down my cheek. My hand shot up to wipe it away, but it was too late. The screen lit with reactions, the live chat surging. Is she okay? That looked real. Why does the older sister look so broken? I froze, my breath caught. My humiliation was no longer private. It was public property, dissected by strangers who thought they knew us. The illusion of perfection cracked, not just in my chest, but across the digital stage we had built, and in that split second, with the world watching, I realized the performance was no longer mine to endure. The morning after the birthday livestream, my phone buzzed relentlessly. I opened it to find Skylar's newest TikTok trending at 500,000 views. She had clipped pieces of last night, edited my awkward smile, and the moment my tear slipped out. Overlaid captions read, "Office Karen ruins the vibe again." She mimicked me, rolling her eyes, clutching her pearls, while the comment section roared with laughter. Strangers who knew nothing about me declared I was bitter, jealous, humorless. In their eyes, I wasn't Hadley Monroe, a woman with a career and a heart. I was a meme. I scrolled, breath tightening, pulse pounding. Skylar leaned into the camera in the final seconds, whispering, "Don't worry, guys, she always overreacts," before blowing a kiss. The video looped endlessly, each cycle slicing deeper. I wanted to tell myself it was just the internet, but the truth was darker. The internet was her weapon, and I was her target. At brunch, my parents were glowing. My mother, in silk robes, replayed the video on her tablet, laughing. "Skylar is so creative," she gushed. "Do you see the way she turned even your little frown into a punchline? Millions of people adore her sense of humor." "She humiliated me," I said flatly, but my father waved his fork. "Hadley, you need to lighten up. Learn to laugh at yourself. You've always been too serious." The words landed like stones in my chest. I clenched my jaw, tasting the bitterness of swallowed protest. No matter how I framed it, they wouldn't see the cruelty. They only saw entertainment. That afternoon, while staring blankly at my laptop, a notification appeared. An anonymous DM. The message was short, typed as if the sender's hands were shaking. "You don't know the half of it. Something bigger is coming. Be ready." My blood ran cold. I reread it, pulse racing, my throat tightening. The profile was new, no posts, no name. I wanted to dismiss it as a troll, but something about the phrasing felt heavy, urgent. My stomach churned. Bigger than public humiliation? Bigger than being turned into a joke? What else could Skylar possibly plan? For 2 days, I carried the message like a splinter beneath the skin. Every smile Skylar flashed on social media, every brand deal announcement, every photo of her wearing the emerald bracelet felt like mockery. Meanwhile, whispers reached me from colleagues, rumors of impropriety, hints that I was untrustworthy. Her poison wasn't confined to screens. It seeped into boardrooms and break rooms, twisting reputations into caricatures. One evening, determined to ground myself, I dug into company records. My family's company was small but respectable, and I had managed suppliers and logistics for years. Yet, in the digital folders, I found something unsettling. Contracts flagged with Skylar's name, but bearing the company letterhead. Sponsorship deals with influencers, advertising agreements, all routed through us. My brows furrowed as I scrolled line by line, payments far larger than any legitimate advertising campaign. The numbers didn't add up. When I opened the attachments, my heart stumbled. Documents bore signatures I knew too well, my father's firm strokes, my mother's sweeping curves. They had signed off on deals that funneled money in convoluted patterns, as if laundering cash through our family's business. I rubbed my temples, disbelief swirling. Were they complicit? Or manipulated by their shining star? I printed the pages, my hands trembling as the ink dried. In black and white, the betrayal screamed. Not only was Skylar exploiting the company's name, she had enlisted my parents, willingly or blindly, to sanction it. It was no longer just sibling rivalry or internet drama. It was fraud. And if exposed, it would consume us all. I rehearsed the confrontation in my head, pacing the kitchen floor. I would lay out the documents, ask for explanations, demand accountability. But when I finally stood before them, the papers in hand, my voice barely steady, their response was chilling. My mother's eyes skimmed the first page before narrowing. My father didn't even look up from his paper. "Hadley," my mother said, her tone sharp but cold, "this is family business. Don't twist it into something ugly." "It already is ugly," I shot back, my voice cracking. "These signatures, your signatures, are tied to money laundering schemes. Schuyler is using the company to—" My father cut me off with a sigh, folding his newspaper as though he were bored of the weather report. "Don't exaggerate. Don't destroy what your sister has built. Do you want to ruin us?" I stared, stunned. The air between us thickened, pressing down like invisible weight. "Don't break this family, Hadley," my mother added, her voice like ice. "You've always had a tendency to overcomplicate things. Don't start again." The silence that followed was cavernous, as though the walls themselves had decided I was an intruder. I clutched the papers, my knuckles white, my heart hammering. In that instant, I understood. I was not just their scapegoat. I was the designated sacrifice, meant to absorb suspicion, ridicule, and shame, while they applauded Schuyler's shine. And behind it all, something bigger was still waiting, the DM's warning echoing in my ears like a curse I couldn't shake. Sunday night came draped in velvet tension. The Monroe dining room had become a stage, the chandelier burning brighter than necessary, the cameras positioned for maximum spectacle. Schuyler loved a spotlight, and tonight she had curated one more family live stream. Plates gleamed under polished silverware, and the comments section on the big monitor rolled so fast it was a blur of emojis and worship. Halfway through the roast, Schuyler stood, tapping her glass with calculated grace. "I hate to do this," she began, her eyes shimmering with staged tears, "but I can't let lies tear our family apart anymore." She gestured toward me, the cameras following, their red dots glowing like accusation. A video played on the wall screen. My breath stopped. There I was. Except not me. A deepfake crafted with frightening precision. My face, my voice, my gestures. But the woman in the video was in a hotel room, leaning toward a man in a suit. "My boss," Schuyler whispered for the audience. The figure kissed her neck, and though my mind screamed this wasn't real, the illusion was damning. Gasps erupted across the table. The live stream audience exploded. Comments filled the screen. "She cheated!" "What a disgrace!" "The family deserves better." Harsher words followed, knives disguised as sentences. My cousins stared, wide-eyed. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. My father shook his head slowly, disappointment etched deep. The humiliation was total, cinematic. Then a shift. The camera panned, catching an unexpected detail. At the far end of the table sat Mark, my actual boss, the man supposedly featured in the video. His face was pale, his eyes darting. The audience caught it instantly. "Wait, isn't that him at the dinner? WTF? How can he be in two places?" Confusion rippled, but the momentum of condemnation didn't stop. My chest constricted, vision tunneling. Words wouldn't come. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, shame consuming oxygen. I stumbled from my chair and fled the table, the clatter of cutlery chasing me into the hallway. Behind me, the comments screamed louder, the live stream immortalizing my disgrace. The fallout came swiftly. By Monday morning, the video had gone viral beyond the family's channel. At work, HR called me in, faces stiff with discomfort. "Given the optics," they said, "we can't keep you on the project. Perhaps some time away would be best." Translation: "You're fired, but we'll dress it in politeness." By Tuesday, Mark avoided eye contact, his own career threatened by the scandal. By Wednesday, my boyfriend packed a bag. He didn't even argue. He simply muttered, "I can't handle this circus," and walked out, leaving me in an apartment that suddenly felt cavernous. Nights blurred together. I lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the silence punctured by my racing thoughts. Shame had hollowed me out, leaving only a husk that replayed the video on an endless loop. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Headlines labeled me the adulterous sister, the jealous scapegoat. Skylar's followers ballooned into millions. She gave interviews about family loyalty and truth, painting herself as the martyr forced to reveal my sins. By Friday, despair had calcified into resolve of a different kind. I began packing. Boxes lined the living room, tape ripping loud as gunshots. My plan was simple: disappear. Leave the city, the company, the family. Let them keep their stage while I vanished. Then, as I sealed a box of books, my laptop chimed. An email blinked into my inbox, no sender name, just a cryptic subject: "Don't leave." My fingers hovered, then clicked. The message was short: "If you walk away now, Skylar will take everything: the company, the house, the legacy. She wants you gone. Don't give her that victory." I sat frozen, rereading, heart pounding in my throat. Attached was a single file. Its name glowed on the screen, sharp and damning: projectscapegoat.pdf. The cursor blinked beside it, daring me to open. I stared at the file name, projectscapegoat.pdf, as if it were a loaded gun. The weight of the choice, open or ignore, pressed against my chest. Finally, I clicked. The pages unfurled like a trap snapping shut. Line by line, I read Skylar's plan in cold, clinical detail: how she would erode my reputation, how she would use deepfakes and leaked scandals, how she would frame me as the unstable sibling who could not be trusted with family assets. The final section carried the sharpest blade, an outline of her inheritance strategy. If I left or if I collapsed publicly, she would gain full control of the company and, eventually, the family estate. My hands trembled as I scrolled. There were notes in margins, comments in bold italics. "Dad will support. He'll do anything to avoid bad press." "Mom can play the martyr card." My stomach clenched. They knew. They knew all along. They weren't innocent bystanders. They were complicit. They had calculated my humiliation as the price of preserving the Monroe image, believing Skylar's rise justified my destruction. Anger flooded me, hot, undeniable. For the first time, it burned away the shame. I wasn't weak. I wasn't hysterical. I was targeted. I was sacrificed so the family could sell a fairy tale to strangers. I stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping loud against the floor. My breath came fast, furious. The next evening, I returned to the family house with the file printed and bound, thick as a brick. I dropped it onto the dining table. The smack echoed. My parents flinched. Skylar's smile faltered. "What's this?" my father asked, though his eyes betrayed recognition. "Your script," I said, "the one you've been performing for months." I flipped open the pages, each line a blade, their faces drained of color. My mother whispered, "Hadley, don't dramatize." "It's not drama, it's documentation." I turned the binder toward them. Paragraphs stared back, damning. They didn't deny. They just sat there, pale, caught. What they didn't know, I had hidden a small camera in my bag, angled at the table. Every reaction, every silence, every flinch was recorded. When I later replayed it, their complicity was written not just in words, but in expressions they couldn't control. That night, rage settled into something sharper: resolve. I called Ethan, a forensic accountant I had met years ago during a supplier audit. His voice was steady, precise. "Bring me everything. We'll follow the money." I did. Together we traced Skylar's contracts, the suspicious payments, the hidden loans. Each breadcrumb led to the next until a picture emerged, one not just of fraud, but of arrogance. Skylar believed no one would challenge her. I reached out to Daniel, the very boss Skylar had smeared in the deep fake. At first, he was hesitant. His reputation was on the line, too. But when I showed him the file, his hesitation turned into fury. "She dragged me into this circus? I'll testify." We weren't just preparing a legal case. We were preparing a narrative, one that would turn the same weapon Skylar had wielded, social media, against her. Ethan compiled clean, irrefutable financial charts. Daniel agreed to speak on camera. I drafted a statement not in defense, but in defiance. The story of being a scapegoat, documented and undeniable. And then came the final piece, the house. The Monroe estate had always been our symbol, our anchor, but tucked into the loan agreements was a secret. Schuyler had mortgaged it for her influencer empire. The bank had grown restless. Ethan connected me with a quiet investor, and through a special purpose vehicle, I purchased the debt myself. The house, in legal terms, now belonged to me. Schuyler had thought she would inherit it unchallenged. Instead, I held the keys, literally and figuratively, to her undoing. For the first time in months, I slept without waking in panic. But clarity brought new shadows. One evening, as I organized files, a note slid under my apartment door. No signature, just a single sentence. "You are not alone in this house." My pulse spiked. I checked the hallway, empty. Inside the note, a clue, handwriting familiar but disguised. Someone within the family, someone I hadn't suspected, was siding with me. Not openly, not yet, but secretly. An ally embedded in the very structure that had caged me. I folded the note, heart racing. Who? An uncle? A cousin? Could it even be one of my parents, guilt gnawing at them? The uncertainty was maddening, but one truth steadied me. I was no longer powerless. The phoenix wasn't just rising, it was sharpening its talons. The Monroe anniversary dinner was meant to be another spectacle, another live stream polished into perfection for the world to admire. My parents had hired a string quartet, the table was draped in silver, and cameras dotted the room like watchful eyes. Schuyler swept in wearing sequins that caught the light like fire, her emerald bracelet flashing with every wave. Comments on the live stream scrolled, "Goddess Schuyler! Family goals again!" They didn't know what was coming. When the meal reached its ceremonial toast, I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice did not. "Before we celebrate," I said, laying the red folder on the table, "there's truth to acknowledge." I opened it, pulling pages free, the rustle cutting through the room's polite chatter. Screens behind me lit up with documents, screenshots of code traces proving the deepfake, timestamps that aligned with Schuyler's own posts. Side by side, her scheme collapsed under the clarity of evidence. Murmurs rose, forks froze midair. "This is fabricated," Schuyler hissed, but my next slide revealed something harder to dismiss. Bank statements, contracts signed under her name, funds funneled through shell companies tied to our family business. Gasps punctured the air. My father shifted uncomfortably, my mother's lips pressed tight. For once, they couldn't call it drama. And then came the twist. A voice from the far end of the table. "She's telling the truth." It was Uncle Peter, the very relative who had always defended Schuyler, who had once called me too sensitive. Now he stood, eyes steady, holding up a folder of his own. "I've seen the transfers. I've been silent too long." The cameras captured everything, the betrayal of their golden child revealed by an ally they thought secure. Schuyler's face contorted, fury masked by desperation. She reached into her purse and produced a USB drive, brandishing it like a weapon. "You want proof?" she spat. "I have my own." She plugged it into the laptop, smirking. "Let's show everyone Hadley's real secrets." But the file that appeared on the screen was not what she expected. Instead of exposing me, it contained drafts of her own fabricated videos, invoices for the contractors she'd paid to build the deep fake, even voice memos where she rehearsed her false sobs. The room erupted, shock, outrage, disbelief, all of it broadcast live to an audience of thousands. The comments turned instantly. "She exposed herself." "Wait, Schuyler is the liar?" "We've been fooled." I watched her pale, her bravado evaporating as the truth devoured the stage she had built. The collapse was swift. Within days, brands terminated their contracts with her. Influencer agencies cut ties. The emerald bracelet she flaunted became a symbol of arrogance and fraud, mocked in memes that spread faster than her fame ever had. Investigators announced inquiries into her finances. Subpoenas followed. My parents, once so quick to defend her, sat in silence during board meetings as shareholders demanded accountability. Their reputations, polished for decades, cracked under scrutiny. They had enabled her, excused her, blinded themselves for the sake of an image. Now, even they could no longer deny what they had wrought. And then came the tide I never expected. Online, strangers who had mocked me weeks earlier began to apologize. The comments shifted. "We owe Hadley an apology." She was the scapegoat all along. This is bigger than family drama. It's survival. My inbox filled with messages, some tearful, some embarrassed, all admitting they had believed the wrong narrative. For the first time, I was not invisible. I was vindicated. Late one night, as I scrolled through the flood of messages, another notification appeared, a direct message from a verified brand account. Their words were simple. "Your story has inspired millions. We'd be honored if you became our next face." I sat back, heart pounding, the irony sharp. I had been erased, humiliated, sacrificed, and yet, by surviving, by refusing to vanish, I had become something unexpected, not a meme, not a scapegoat, but a symbol. Still, the offer left me trembling. Fame had poisoned my family once already. Would I accept, or would I forge something different? The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the choice still waited, hovering like a spotlight above me. The fallout reshaped everything. The Monroe Company, once run like a family fiefdom, now resembled a battlefield cleared for reconstruction. Under pressure from shareholders and regulators, a new independent audit committee was formed. Ethan, the forensic accountant who had stood by me, was appointed as an advisor. For the first time, numbers were no longer hidden under charm or deception. Transparency replaced secrecy, and rules replaced favoritism. Meetings that once silenced me now invited my voice, and though the sting of old wounds lingered, progress began to mend the fractures. Schuyler's empire crumbled in public view. Brand after brand severed ties, her follower count dropping as quickly as it had once risen. Investigations into fraud, tax evasion, and misrepresentation tightened around her like a net. Court summons arrived. The girl who had once lived for the camera now avoided it, her sequins traded for somber suits and hurried steps into courthouses. My parents, stripped of their ability to deny, were required by the board to undergo family therapy. They resisted at first, but cracks in their facade left them no choice. For the first time in their lives, they sat in a circle of chairs, forced to face the truth that love without fairness had become cruelty. Weeks later, I returned to the family house, walking through the quiet halls heavy with ghosts. In my mother's dresser lay the emerald bracelet, still gleaming, still cursed with history. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my palm. Generations had treated it as a crown, a token of favoritism, a symbol of who mattered most. Now it was my turn to choose. I held it up to the mirror. The green stones glimmered against my wrist, but instead of pride, I felt only chains. Slowly, deliberately, I set it back down. I would not wear it. The curse ended here. That night, I drafted the bylaws of a non-profit organization, the Scapegoat Project. Its mission was simple: support those trapped in toxic families, those erased or blamed until they doubted their own worth. Survivors wrote to me, telling me their stories. We built a network of support groups, legal clinics, and anonymous hotlines. The pain I had endured became fuel, redirected into a purpose far greater than revenge. When the nonprofit launched publicly, I made a symbolic choice. At the press conference, instead of wearing the emerald bracelet, I placed it in a velvet case and announced it would be donated to a museum exhibit on generational legacies. This piece, I told the cameras, is not a prize. It is a lesson. Families that value symbols over people risk destroying themselves. May it stand not as a crown, but as a warning. The audience stood in silence before breaking into applause. Life shifted again, this time toward something cleaner, lighter. I rebuilt my career with integrity, and though opportunities arrived, book deals, endorsements, I measured each one carefully. The spotlight no longer seduced me. Freedom did. Months later, while working late in the nonprofit's office, my friend the IT analyst stopped by. He leaned against the doorway, holding a coffee. "You know," he said slowly, "there's something I never told you." I looked up. His eyes were thoughtful, troubled. "That email you got, the one warning you not to leave, the one with project scapegoat.pdf, you always assumed it was me." "It wasn't?" I asked, frowning. He shook his head. "No, I checked. It came from Skylar's own IP address." My breath caught. "She sent it?" "Not intentionally, maybe," he replied. "From what I traced, it looked like a draft hidden in her files, sent late at night. My guess? A slip. Or maybe a moment when even she couldn't live with what she was doing. Maybe some part of her wanted you to know. Maybe she wanted you to stop her." I sat back, the revelation sinking into me like cold water. Skylar, in her cruelty, had unconsciously reached out for rescue. The very hand that tried to destroy me had, in a fractured moment of weakness, begged for help. For a long time, I said nothing. Rage, grief, pity, all swirled together, impossible to separate. But in that swirl was also something unexpected. Compassion. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But compassion for the prison she had built for herself, one no audience, no applause could break open. When the news spread, people reacted with shock. Some clung to their hatred of her, others felt a reluctant sympathy. As for me, I understood finally that my story had never been just about her. It had been about me learning that freedom is not winning the approval of the people who betrayed you, but walking away from their cage altogether. The phoenix had risen, not to burn what was left behind, but to fly beyond it.